Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Welcome to the first workshop or sharing session that is organized by Center for Independent Learning of CELPAD. So before we proceed with the session, let's begin our event today with the recitation of Al-Fatih. Okay, Alhamdulillah, we are able to meet today. And before we go on, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you to our speaker today. Yeah, it's Dr. Muhammad Hairul bin Abu Sufi. Yeah, welcome, Dr. Hairul. Dr. Hairul has been teaching in the university in CELPAD for more than 13 years. And he has a lot of passion in academic writing, especially when it involves English placement tests, EPT. And he is very involved in giving talks and also assisting students in the writing of data analysis. For your information also, Dr. Muhammad Hairul is an expert in the language policy and also curriculum, and he is quite well versed in the CEFR, the Common European Framework Reference for Languages. Yeah. Now, if you have questions regarding our topic today, which is data analysis for task 1 of EPT, you can ask maybe towards the end of his presentation. Would that be okay, Dr. Hairul? Or they can prompt you in between? What's your idea like?
Yeah, there will be a question and answer session at the end of the session.
Okay.
But I'll try also make it interactive, so I will also pose questions to them that they can answer.
Yeah. All right, that's great. Okay, without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Hairul, and I leave the session to Dr. Hairul to go on with his sharing session.
All right, thank you very much, Madam Nur Amili. So first and foremost, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me just share my screen with you. Yeah, just give me a sec, yeah. Okay, all right, yeah. Yes, yeah, you can see my screen right now, right? Kamili, can you see my screen?
Yes, very clear.
Okay, all right. So as I introduced just now, my name is Muhammad Hairul bin Abu Sufi. I'm a lecturer here at the English Language Division of CELPAD. Thank you very much once again, Madam Nur Amili, for giving me the opportunity to share my experience, and also data analysis has always been my passion, teaching here in CELPAD. So I have always been doing this talk here on data analysis until very recently. I have not been very active. Starting to be active again. All right, so what we're going to do today is that we are going to go through data analysis. Now, this is not covered in your textbooks, yeah? You will have separate sessions with the writing teacher on data analysis. It's also important for you to understand the technicalities of data analysis, because number one, it's a very technical type of writing. It's not like the normal opinion-based writing that you do for your essay. There are many things that you have to understand, the technicalities of data analysis, and hopefully by the end of this session, you will be able to gain at least some, if not a lot, of knowledge concerning data analysis. And of course, your writing teacher will cover this in class also. Okay, so I'll just give you a bit of, I would say, an exposure of what data analysis is, what is expected out of you when you are attempting data analysis for EPT. All right, number one, yeah. we will call the data analysis a report, yeah, since what you can be writing is that you'll be writing a report instead of writing an essay. So there are two ways of how you can actually present your report in the EPT. Number one is that you can write it in one paragraph with 3 parts. So the 3 parts would consist of the introduction, would consist of the analysis, which is the body paragraph, if you are more familiar with that. And also the third part of the report is also called the closing. Yeah, you can call it the closing or you can call it the conclusion. But then again, since this is a report, we would stick to the term closing instead of conclusion, right? So this is one way of doing it. You will not be penalized for writing everything in one paragraph. Okay, you will not be penalized for that. However, if you are uncomfortable with this format, what you can do is that you can do it the traditional way of writing it in 3 paragraphs, and you will also have the 3 different parts, which means that you will start with the introduction, all right, and then you will have the body paragraph, where that's where your analysis will come in, and finally you will have your concluding paragraph, yeah, which is the closing, yeah, the closing of your report that you'll be writing during the EPT examination. Okay, so it's up to you. Okay, it's up to you, but then again, you must also consult your writing teacher. Okay, most probably your writing teacher has his or her own preference of how you want to present your report. Yeah, but as far as I'm concerned, and based on my experience on marking EPT, we would accept, yeah, either you write it in 1 paragraph, or you can also write it in 3 different paragraphs. It's up to you, okay? But if you wanted to make it clearer, okay, you can write it in 3 different paragraphs where you can show that there is a differentiation between the introduction, the analysis, and also the closing of your report writing. Okay, now for the language input, this is something that you will have to understand also, okay? Since data analysis is very technical, all right, the language is also very specific, yeah? It's specific in a way where it depends on what is being presented to you, all right? What is being presented to you, number one. Also, it's not like the normal type of essay writing where you would explain actions based on what's happening or what will happen or what you think is going to happen and what not, because in data analysis, everything has been presented to you. You're looking at the paper, you're looking at the question right now, you're looking into the graph, it's there already. So you have to understand what are the type of tenses that needs to be used in order for you to successfully present your data analysis. So my suggestion is that when you are presenting the chart or when you're describing the chart itself, you use the present tense. Okay, so for instance, right, the bar graph shows information about the number of students studying at CELPAD IIUM, for instance. Yeah. Okay. So when you're looking into the graph, yeah, when you're trying to describe the graph, you use the present tense. Yeah, and then it will use the past tense, right, to describe things in the chart that have passed. So most probably the information that you will get, yeah, in the graph that will be presented to you during the examination will all be in the past, yeah, unless there are things in the future, and then you will have to use the future tense, yeah, all right, but yeah, as much as possible, try to be consistent with the tenses. All right, be consistent with the tenses. We'll accept also, yeah, for instance, if we're going to use a perfect tense, okay, but then again, a data analysis for data analysis report writing, it's best if you stick to just using the past tense and also the present tense if it calls for using these 2 tenses, yeah, okay. But then again, you have to remember that if there is data in the future, all right, you'll have to write things in the future. But as far as I'm concerned, for EPT, it's very rare that data in the future is being published for your examination. All right, so be consistent with your tenses. Right, next, what you should know in a data analysis is that you have to provide an analysis of information provided. All right, so you do not, you're not going to be writing an essay, for instance, explaining about why or explaining about how. You're not going to be explaining about the methods. You're not going to be explaining about the reasons, yeah, based on your own understanding. But what you will be doing is that you will be presenting information based on a graph, right, or type of stimuli that has been presented to you. All right, so you have to remember that, okay, it's just the analysis of what you are looking at. Avoid providing opinions, yeah, in the data analysis. That's number 1. Number two, you should also avoid describing, listing, and stating information, right? So this is probably the easiest way to complete your data analysis task in the EPT, which means that you're just describing what you see. You're just listing the information, or you're just stating the obvious information that you see in the charts. For instance, you see that in the year 1998, for instance, in comparison to year 1992, say, for instance, that there was a difference. Yeah, in 1998, it was at 20, the figure was 20, and the year 2000, the figure was at 40. You can't say in 1998, the figure was at 20. In the year 2000, the figure was at 40. So that's stating information. That's called listing. That is also called describing. Yeah, you're not supposed to do that. What you're supposed to do is that you're supposed to analyze it critically in comparison to just stating what you see on the exam paper. Right, next, you should also include the description of numbers and figures. It can be either percentages, it can be currency, it can be the number of people. Yeah, there are many types of information that you can actually find in the chart. Yeah, right, so be careful of what you are looking into and make sure that you understand what you're looking at also. Next, when you are presenting, when you're presenting the information, you can either use symbol or word for numbers or figures. For instance, okay, if you have a look at this one, 10 ringgit, okay, it can be presented as RM10, that is acceptable, or you can also write 10 Malaysian ringgit. But of course, the spelling has got to be correct. If the spelling is not correct, you will be penalized for that. Okay, so it's up to you. Either use the symbol or the word percent over here, right? Okay, the word percent, you can use the word percent, right? So this is the British and American spelling. Or you can also use the symbol for percent, which is this, yeah, this symbol over here, percentage, okay? It's up to you, but be consistent also. If you're going to use the words throughout. If you're not going to be using words, we're going to be using symbols, use the symbols throughout. All right, now, when you are trying to attempt data analysis in EPT, what you have to do, number one, is that you have to identify the type of graph. Okay, so there will be different type of graphs, yeah, in different EPTs. For instance, yeah, we have a bar graph, yeah. And the bar graph can also become a horizontal bar graph. It can also be a vertical bar graph. Yeah, it can be a bar graph, it can be a pie chart, it can also be a line graph, yeah, depending on what the question is about. Okay, so you have to properly identify the type of graph. Right, number two, you have to identify whether the graph is dynamic or static. Now, for those of you who are able to answer to my question here, if you're on Zoom, do you know what is a dynamic graph and do you know what is a static graph? Can I get some answers from the students who are here with me on Zoom? Anybody?
Yes. Static don't have a timeline. Dynamic have a timeline.
Okay, excellent. Very good. Okay, now let me show you this graph. Okay, let me show you this graph. Okay, can you tell me, so this one over here, okay, have a look at the graph. What's the name of this graph? What's the type of graph?
Bar graph.
This is a bar graph. Very good, sister. Okay, is this a vertical bar graph or is this a horizontal bar graph? Anybody? Can you tell me whether this is horizontal or whether this is a vertical bar graph?
Vertical bar graph.
Very good. This is a vertical bar graph. Okay, so for you to remember between vertical bar graph and a horizontal bar graph, right? Yeah, when you go to the beach, right? When you go to the beach, right? I'm sure that you like to go to the beach, right? When you look, yeah, when you look out, yeah, when you look out into the sea, and you see that line that separates the sky and the water, all right? You call that the horizon, right? Okay, so remember, anything that goes from left to right is the horizontal bar graph. Sorry, the bar graph that goes from left to right is the horizontal bar graph. The bar graph that goes up and down is called the vertical bar graph. Okay, very good. Okay, that's my first question. Now, have a look at the question. It says, the graph below illustrates the number of roti canai eaten for breakfast by students A, B, C, and D on 3 different days last week. Okay, now my question is, when you look into this vertical bar graph, is this graph static or is this graph dynamic? Anyone can answer this question? Is this a static or is this dynamic?
Static, teacher.
This is a static bar graph?
Dynamic bar graph.
Okay, so now we've got people saying dynamic and we've got people saying static. Okay, let's have a look at this again. Yes, remember just now, the sister, there was that one sister just now, she told us all that the difference between a dynamic and a static bar graph is that there is a timeline for a dynamic bar graph, for a dynamic graph, and there's no timeline for a static graph. Now, if you have a look at this graph, is there a timeline?
Yes.
Yes, there is a timeline. Very good. Now, what is the time? What is the time presented?
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Very good, Sister Shazrin, yeah? So you can see over here, okay, for instance, if you want to know whether there is a trend or no trend, you will see that there is a timeline, okay? Timeline measuring the same item between the subjects, okay, or among the subjects. Now, for instance, if you have a look at student A around 2.5 roti canai on Monday, all right, on Tuesday, all right, he or she ate about 4.5 pieces of roti canai. So can you see that there is a movement between the number of roti canai eaten on Monday and Tuesday?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, there is a movement over there. So this is considered the dynamic bar graph, okay?
Bar graph. Yes.
Yes. Excellent, very good. You understand that, the dynamic bar graph?
Yes, I do understand.
Okay, good. Now, let me give you a second chart, yeah? Have a look at this chart. Okay, now, it says the graph below illustrates the amount spent in Malaysian ringgit on 3 different items by students A, B, and C last month. Okay, so what's the name of this graph? Anyone? Can anyone tell me what's the type of this graph?
Horizontal.
It's a horizontal?
Horizontal
Yeah, horizontal what?
bar graph.
Very good. This is a horizontal bar graph. Okay, now we have students A, student B, and student C here. Okay, and this is the amount spent. Yeah, this is the expenditure, the amount spent on 3 different items, which are clothes, food, and books. Okay, can anyone tell me whether this is a dynamic bar graph or whether this is a static bar graph?
Dynamic.
This is dynamic. Okay, all right. Anyone else who's got a different answer? Of course, the other answer is, of course, it's a static bar graph. Okay, so now, would you think that this is a static bar graph or do you think that this is a dynamic bar graph?
Static.
Okay, why is it static?
Because there's no timeline.
But it says over here last month. Isn't that a timeline?
No, because it's only the one times only. It doesn't get any different.
Okay, very good. Yeah, all right. Okay, there's no timeline. Now, when you want to understand whether there's a timeline or no timeline, have a look at student A. So, for instance, student A spent how much on clothes? What's the amount spent by student A on clothes?
200.
200, very good. Now, can you say the amount of money spent on food? Okay, the amount of money spent on clothes was 200 ringgit, all right? However, the amount of money spent on food increased to 250 ringgit. Can you say that?
Yes.
No, you cannot say that because when you talk about increase, decrease, those are all trends. You can only use that with graphs that have trends. Okay, there are movements, and then you can use increase, decrease, fluctuate, slump, plummet, plateau, and so on. Okay, you can only use that with graphs that have a timeline that talks about one item being compared at different time. Now, for this one over here, nothing is being compared to different time. Okay, what is being presented to you over here is how much they have spent on clothes, on food, and on books. All right. Is this clear? Or would you like me to explain this again? Is it clear? Okay. All right. Yeah. So I take it that this is clear. Okay. So remember, okay, there is a difference between the dynamic graph and the static graph. All right. So we'll go into the vocabulary a bit later after this. Okay. All right. Next. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. Have another person just say, can sir explain again
Which part?
for timeline 1?
Uh,
Because I check, they won't get explained again.
okay. Which part? Which part?
Just now.
Oh, you mean about this one?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, very good. Okay, about the timeline. Okay, let me show you this graph again. Okay, let me show you graph number 1. Okay, this is called a dynamic graph because there is a timeline. So your question is, what is a timeline? A timeline shows what has happened. The timeline in the graph shows the changes that happened over a specific time. Now, if you want to know whether there is a timeline or not, you will see that one item, okay, one item or one subject is being compared to different times of the week, of the day. It can be an hour, it can be a second also, okay? Just as long as there is a difference in time, yeah, which means that there is a movement, yeah, of one subject versus the time presented, this is considered a dynamic graph. Okay, for instance, okay, on Monday, this guy ate say around 4 pieces of roti canai. And then on Tuesday, he only ate 2.5 pieces, sorry, student A, yeah, 2.5 pieces of roti canai. Okay, on Wednesday, he only ate 2 pieces of roti canai. So you can see that there is a decrease in the number of roti canai eaten by student A from Monday to Wednesday. You can see that there's the movement. It decreased, yeah? All right. Or for instance, yeah, if we have a look at, okay, this one, student B. All right. So on Monday, he ate 2.5 pieces of roti canai. And then on Tuesday, he ate about 4 pieces of roti canai. You can see that there's a movement. There's a difference, which means on Monday, he ate this much. On Tuesday, he ate that much. That shows the movement, and that shows the time. The time is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So the same item being compared to different times of the week, of the day, of the hour, in fact, even different seconds will be considered as a trend. Okay, so that's number 1. If there is no trend, like for instance, we have a look at the second graph over here, even though it says over here last month, this is not a timeline. This is just a period of time. It's just the duration that it happened, okay? So you can't say, for instance, student A spent 100 ringgit on clothes on Monday. We do not have this information on the chart. The only type of information that we get on this chart, on this graph, is that student A spent this amount of money on clothes, which is 200 ringgit. And then he or she spent about 250 ringgit on clothes, right? On food. And he or she spent about 400 ringgit on books. So you can't say the amount of money spent on clothes increased with the increase in comparison to the amount money spent on food. You can't say that because there is no trend. You cannot compare the same information based on different timings of the day, of the week, of the month, for instance, also, okay? That's number 1. Number 2, you can't say, for instance, if you're looking at the same item over here, food, okay? You're looking into the expenditure for food. Okay, say, for instance, have a look at student A. Student A spent about 250 ringgit on food. Student B spent about 400 ringgit on food. You can't say the amount of money spent on food by student A increased, yeah, to 400 ringgit by student B. It doesn't make sense, right? So why does it make sense? Because there is no time to show that there is a movement between the amount of money spent on either clothes, food, or books on different days, hours, or months of the year. All right, is that clear?
Yes.
All right. Okay, it's good. Yeah. So if you have any questions, just stop me. If you need me to repeat something, let me know. Okay. It's very important for you to understand the difference between a dynamic graph and a static graph, because if you are presented a static graph in the EPT and you write it as a dynamic graph, you will be penalized for that. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, a static graph cannot be a dynamic graph. Am I right? Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, but when you look into a dynamic graph, can a dynamic graph become a static graph? Can it?
What?
Okay, so a static graph cannot become a dynamic graph. All right, so which means that it's static. It only talks about how much you have spent. So for instance, just now, okay, student A spent 200 ringgit on food. He spent 300 ringgit on food, yeah, on clothes, for instance. But if you have a look at this one over here, at this graph over here, this is a dynamic graph. But my question is, can a dynamic graph become a static graph?
Yes.
Yes. How, Shazrin?
Just depend on one day.
Excellent. Yeah, depend on one day versus the student. Okay, say for instance, you look at Monday. Okay, so on Monday, student A ate 4 pieces of roti canai. Student B ate 2.5 pieces of roti canai. So if, for instance, you have misunderstood this graph and you wrote, okay, for instance, yeah, because this is a dynamic graph, but you wrote it as a static graph. Say, for instance, you say student A ate 4 roti canai on Monday. In contrast, student B ate half the amount of roti canai eaten by student A. That is correct. So what I'm trying to tell you is that a static graph cannot become a dynamic graph, but a dynamic graph can become a static graph depending on how you put the information together. Okay, faham tak? Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay, right, very good. Okay, very good. Okay, but my advice is, if it is a dynamic graph, you must analyze the graph as a dynamic graph. Okay, but say for instance, if you misunderstand the graph and you analyze it as a static graph, you will not be penalized. But for a static graph, if you analyze it as a dynamic graph, you will be penalized. Okay, now that's the difference between the static and dynamic graphs. Okay, moving on. Yeah. You have to identify the main trends for each mode, for instance. Okay, so for instance, if you are given that graph just now, you have to find the trends, yeah, whether there is a trend or whether there's no trend. If there's no trend, and then how do you identify the percentage, for instance, the proportion, okay? And then you also have to identify any large increases or decreases or proportions or approximations. And finally, when you are trying to understand the stimuli, it's very important for you to not just understand whether it's a static or dynamic graph, but for you to also cleverly and critically present the analysis or the information by grouping the information together. Okay, now let's have a look. Okay, what is grouping data? When you are grouping information together, we present it with a graph, and you have to group the information together. What you have to do is that you have to look for clear and consistent directions. You have to look for specific changes. You have to look for anything which is significant between any of the data, and you have to see the relationship between the percentages or the modes. Now, let me show you this graph. Okay, now say for instance, if this is a graph that has been presented to you or that will be presented to you in the EPT, what you have to do is that you have to understand this graph first. Okay, number one, by understanding it, it's like I said just now, identify the type of graph. So can someone tell me what's the name of this graph? What's the name of it? What's the type of the graph?
Vertical bar graph.
It's a vertical bar graph. Excellent. Is it static or is it dynamic?
Dynamic.
Very good. Okay, very good. It's dynamic. Now, what is the graph presenting to you? What's the information being presented to you?
Oil production capacity.
Okay, about the oil production capacity. What else can you find in this graph?
Millimeters of barrel per day.
Rather, yeah, okay, good. All right. So have a look at the axis over here. Have a look at the vertical axis. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. What's this? What's this? What information is this?
Milliliters of barrel per day.
Okay, the amount of barrels, yeah, the amount of oil produced, yeah, a day in barrels. Okay, very good. Brother Daryl, can you mute your microphone? Staza, can we mute your microphone? Hold on, yeah. I can't.
So I can only give you the breakout for the samples. The first one is the weight.
No, I can't. Yeah. Okay. Can someone? Okay, I can't do the microphone. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right. Okay. Back to the information just now. So this is the graph that's been presented to you. So you have the vertical axis and you have the horizontal axis. The vertical axis talks about the amount of oil which is produced in barrels per day. All right. How about the horizontal axis? What does this talk about?
The country.
Yes, very
Countries.
good. We're talking about the countries that are producing or that have produced the oils. Okay. Now, how about this one over here? 1990, 2000, 2005, and 2010. This is?
Yes.
This year's, yeah, that the amount of oil was produced. Okay, now, if you are presented with this type of graph, now, are you going to be talking about the countries one by one? Say, for instance, you're going to be talking about, okay, in Iran, okay, in the year 1990, all right, the amount of oil produced was 3 million barrels per day. And it increased to just under 4 million barrels per day. While in the year 2005, it was exactly 4 million barrels a day, and it increased to slightly over 4 million barrels per day in the year 2010. Would that be a good way of how you would analyze the data? Yes or no? Is that a good way or is not? That's not a good way?
No question mark.
No, because very good. No, because no question mark. No, because that is not an analysis. That is called a description. That is called listing information. That is called stating the obvious. That's why I said earlier just now, right? You do not state the obvious. You do not list and you do not describe. You analyze. So if you want to analyze this, remember, there's just so much information over here. How do I analyze this critically and effectively? So what do? You group the information together. What does grouping the information together mean? It means that you look for data which is related to each other, which shares the same quality, which shares the same trends, which shares the same, for instance, percentages, okay, between one another, and you put them together. Okay, now there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 different countries over here. Say, for instance, yeah, I said just now that you have to group the information together. If you're going to group the information together for this graph, how would you group the information together? What countries would you group together and why? Can anyone tell me? Can anyone try? How would you group the information together? Anybody?
Can I try?
Okay, it's okay, you can try.
Iran, Iraq, and Saudi because they have increase.
Okay, wait, hold on. Iran, Iraq,
and Saudi.
Saudi.
Also Kuwait.
And Kuwait, because?
It is increase.
Okay, say for instance, that's the first group, okay, because you see it increased, all right? What's the second group?
Qatar and UAE.
Okay, so if you say Qatar and UAE, why would you put Qatar and UAE together?
Qatar because it's fluctuating.
Okay, Qatar because it's fluctuating, and then UAE.
It's stable and then increase.
Stable and increase. Okay, now that is your way of doing it, which means that if you're going to group the information together, you will have Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia as one group. And then you will have Qatar and UAE as one group, which means that you've got two analyses, which is good. However, it might not be enough when you are trying to write your analysis and you're trying to fulfill the number of words, but very good try. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, if I were to be given this graph and I would have to group the information together, I would, number one, like what your friend said just now, I would put Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, but not Saudi Arabia, but I will put UAE together. So this is one group. Now, why would I put one group? Because the amount of barrels produced per day between these four countries was what? Similar.
No need.
Okay, so if you have a look, have a look at Iran, have a look at Iraq, have a look at Kuwait, and have a look at UAE. The amount of oil, when I say the amount of oil was somewhat similar, what do I mean by it was somewhat similar? Because if you have a look at it, they all have different figures. But I'm saying that I'm going to put this into one group because these four countries produce around the same amount of oil per day throughout the years. Can anyone help me explain why you think that I have grouped these four countries together?
Because it looks similar.
Yeah, exactly, because it's similar, right? Because have a look, right? Iran is around 2, Iraq is at 2, this is slightly under 2, and this UAE is just above 2. And then if you have a look at the year 2000, it was just under 4. This is this is somewhere over 2, this is somewhere over 2, this is somewhere over 2, but the range is between 2 to 4 million barrels per day. So if I was writing this data analysis, I would say firstly, it can be seen that Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, and the UAE produce around the same amount of oils in 1990, 2000, 2005, and 2010, and it can be seen that the amount of oil produced per day ranged between 2 to 4 million barrels per day. Okay, is that clear?
Yes.
Yes. Now that is what you call an analysis. That becomes a critical evaluation of the data, rather than saying that, oh, okay, it increased from 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5. No, that is not the analysis. Okay, that's number one. Number two, my second analysis for this graph is that I would talk about Saudi Arabia. Although Saudi Arabia shares the same trend, with Iran, Iraq, and Kuwait, which means that it increased gradually throughout the 4 stated years. Why is it, do you think, that I have put Saudi Arabia as one entity instead of combining it with Iran, Iraq, and Kuwait?
Because the number of oil barrel produced is way higher than the others.
Excellent, because it produced the highest number of oils per day. Also, so what you're trying to say is that for Saudi Arabia, for Saudi Arabia, on the other hand, although there was a gradual increase from the year 1990 to 2000, okay, but the amount of oil produced per day was the highest in comparison to the other countries presented in this graph. Very good. Okay, and finally, I would talk about Qatar. Why would I talk about Qatar?
The lowest?
Okay, yes, you can say Qatar on the excellent. Qatar, on the other hand, produced the lowest amount of oil throughout the 4 stated years, and it ranged between, say, for instance, 0 to 1 million barrels per day, and that is your data analysis. Okay, all right, now that is what you call grouping information together. So it's not about writing about what is happening in the graph. It's not writing about what you can see in the graph. It's writing about how critical you are in trying to explain the graph and present the data to us, because this, again, is a data analysis, and the data analysis is not an essay. It is a report. Okay, any questions about this before we move on? No questions, okay? All right, okay. Now, let's have a look at it.
Can I ask?
Yep.
So like we just making it as general, like 2 until 4, not in 1990 quiet have 2 million like that.
Yes, you cannot say in 1990 Kuwait has 2 million. In 1990 Iraq has 2 million also. In 1990 Iran had 3 million. No, that is what you call describing. You will be penalized for that because you are not analyzing the data. You're just describing. You're just listing the data instead of giving us a critical evaluation of the data. All right, sister?
Okay, thank
Sorry.
you.
All right, you're welcome.
It's also allowed to make the difference, maybe to say the difference between Qatar and Saudi Arabia, because Qatar is lowest compared to Saudi Arabia. Is it allowed?
Yes, you can. That is an analysis. So say, for instance, you have actually put this into three different groups, okay? So you've spoken about Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, and UAE. And then now you're talking about Saudi Arabia. Okay, you're saying that Saudi Arabia, on the other hand, produced the most amount of oil. All right, and then for Qatar, you can say, in contrast, Qatar, on the other hand, produced the lowest amount of oil. Yes, that's very good. Yeah, in comparison, Saudi Arabia produced the most and Qatar produced the least. And then you have to provide the figures. So don't forget, since this is a report writing, this is data analysis, you must also include the numbers. So you cannot just say that Saudi Arabia produced the most amount of oil and Qatar produced the least amount of oil without informing the examiner that you understand how much is being produced. So you can't just say the lowest and the highest, but you must also provide the figure. All right?
Okay.
Excellent. Okay, right, moving on, okay? Okay, now let's have a look at the vocabulary input. Okay, at the vocabulary. I'm sorry, there's a lot of chats over here. There's a lot, I think many people have actually sent me chat. I'll look into that shortly, okay? So have a look at the vocabulary input. Okay, so these are sample trends, okay? Now, there are 4 different types of trends that you have to understand. Number 1 are trends that shows an up movement, trends that show a down movement, a trend that goes up and down, and a trend that goes flat. Okay, so for instance, up, okay, you have increased, rocketed, climbed, and then increase a climb. There's a lot more actually. Now, if I were to teach data analysis, in the past, okay, when I was teaching data analysis, what I would do is that for the first class, you would have to come up with your own dictionary of the different kind of trend words that you know, so you do not use the same words over and over and over again. So in the end, in my class, we have our own dictionary, and everyone would have a collection of about 40 to 50 different words to use when they're doing a data analysis, okay, to show different trends, going up, and down, and flat. Okay, so up, have a look at the word increase, rocketed, climbed. Increase, is this probably a neutral trend, or do you think that it's a strong trend?
It's strong.
Increase is strong. Increase is strong in a way that it means that it's going up. But when you talk about an increase, do you know the magnitude of the increase? Do you think it's just like it's a huge increase, or do you think that an increase is just an increase? It's just going up.
It's just going
Yes, it's just going up. Okay. Now compare increased to rocketed. Okay. Now when you talk about rocketed, is there can you sense that there's a huge magnitude of it going up? Like it's like big in comparison to increase, or is it just the same with increase?
comparison to increase.
So it's big, right? Okay, you can see the difference, right? When you talk about increase, say for instance, it increased, you can say like number 2 to number 3 is increased, very good. But when you say rocketed, can you say the number of students in 2010 was at 5 people, all right? And then it rocketed to 6 people in the year 2020. Is that a rocket?
No.
No. Okay, so
No.
when you talk about rocketed, you're talking about huge increases from 1 to 1,000, 1 to 50, 1 to 100. Now that's a rocket. Increase would be 1 to 2, 2 to 3. That is an increase. A climb is also the same thing. It's neutral. 2 to 3 is a climb. 3 to 4 is a climb. But when you say 5 to 1 million, that is a climb, but you cannot just say that it's a climb. You have to qualify the trend with an adverb. Okay, so we'll do that shortly. We'll do that very shortly. Okay, so yes, you're very good. Okay, so increase is neutral, rocketed is strong, climb is neutral. Okay, now what's the difference between increased and an increase? What's the difference? Anybody? The word increased?
Maybe an increase is more specific.
An increase is more specific. Okay, good try. Okay, why is it more specific? Because
It focuses on one thing that increase rather
yes,
than
which means that it is the noun. Yeah, that's why it's very focused. And increase, it's very specific in comparison to increase. So the subject has changed. Okay, when you use the verb and when you use the noun, when you're writing your sentence structure for data analysis, there is a difference of how you can write it, and it shows that the subject is also very different. Okay, very good, brother, just now. Okay, now you also have the downtrends. For instance, you have the word decrease, you have the word drop, plunge, a decrease, and you also have the word a drop. Again, my question, decrease, is decrease neutral or is it strong? Decrease, is it a strong word or is it a neutral word?
Neutral.
How about drop?
More
Yes, yeah, a drop is also neutral. We can say, like, for instance, right, the number of students dropped from 4 to 2 is correct. Yeah. Okay, how about the word plunge? Is that strong or is that neutral?
It's strong.
It's very strong. Can you say the number of students plunged from 4 to 3?
No.
No. Okay, you can't say that. Yeah, it's wrong. Yeah, so which means that if you use that, you will be penalized. Which means that you're using the wrong word to explain the wrong trend. Okay, very good. Okay, and then you also have the noun form, which is a decrease, and you also have a drop. Right. Okay, the third trend is up and down. Okay, so this is there's one favorite word that students always use to go to show up and down. What is it? So when you see a trend that goes up and down, up and down, up and down, what comes to your mind?
Fluctuate.
Yes, fluctuate. But everybody uses the word fluctuate. The whole world uses the word fluctuate. For you to differentiate yourself, yeah, from the other students who just use the word fluctuate, you can use the word erratic. You can use the word volatile. Okay, volatile. So the number of students was volatile throughout the 4 stated years. Yeah, which means that it fluctuated. Yeah, but then again, if you want to use erratic and volatile, you cannot use this as a verb. You cannot say the number of students volatile. Okay, you cannot say the number of students erraticized. You cannot say that, but you can say the number of students fluctuated. Yeah, it means the same thing. Okay, you'll have to know how to use that. And finally, the last trend is a flat trend. Okay, so for instance, when you talk about something which is flat, when there's no movement, you can say that stable. You can use the word stable. Okay, you can use the word stable. How about a plateau? Can anyone tell me what's a plateau? Anyone can tell me? Okay.
Is it static?
Yes, brother Danish.
Is it static?
Which part is static? When you talk about a plateau, there are 2 different movements. So which part is the static part? The first part or the second part?
The second.
Very good. So which means when you talk about a plateau, there are 2 movements. The movement actually it goes up and then it becomes static, or it goes down and it goes static. Okay, so for instance, let me see if I can draw this. Okay. Okay, say for instance, yeah, when you talk about plateau, you have a trend which goes up, okay, which goes up, and then it remains stable. Okay, this is the, what do you call this? This is the, oh shoot. This is the plateau. Yes, this is a plateau, okay? All right, so of course, yeah, you have this, okay? And then it can go up again, okay? It can go up again. But if you want to talk about this trend over here, you can say for instance, yeah, this is a trend. And then this part, okay, this is your timeline, say for instance, okay? This is your timeline. So this is in year A, okay? And this is in year B, all right? So this is in year C, say for instance. So you can say, all right, that the trend or the number of, say for instance, this is the number of students. The number of students from A to B plateaued at, say for instance, this is 100. Okay, this is plateaued, all right? And then you can continue before it continued climbing to 200 students in the year C. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Okay. No. No. Okay, which part is not clear?
About to make a plateau and then it's up again.
Okay, okay. Now, when you talk about a plateau is just the movement of going up and becoming stable. Inilah, this is the plateau. Ini plateau. This is the plateau. Okay, so usually when you have a plateau, it can either go up and then it can go back down. All right, but of course, when you look into this, a lot of students will say that this is a fluctuation. Yes, students will say that, oh, this is a fluctuation. But when you look to this more critically, you see that one trend is actually rising. And then this trend over here, which is being stable over here, this is the plateau. Okay, this is the plateau over here. All right, and then it can go up, it can also go down. All right. The difference between a plateau and a peak is that the peak is the highest point. The plateau is the point where the trend stops moving and becomes stagnant for a period of time. That is what you call a plateau. Okay, can you understand?
Yes.
Okay, very good, yeah? Okay, that's a plateau, right? Okay, now, so I was talking about adjectives just now. When you are using adjectives to qualify, right, when you want to qualify your nouns, okay, you can use it in two different ways. Number one is that you want to describe the degree of the change. So have a look at this sentence, yeah? There was a slight increase in the value of the ringgit, okay? Now, when you look into the sentence, there was a slight increase. When it talks about the degree of change, what is it that you understand? What is the degree of change?
It's just a small change.
Yes, how much it changes, small change. Yeah, there was a slight increase, which means that the increase was very small. So which means that you're talking about how much it has changed. Now, in comparison to the sentence, there was a rapid increase in the value of the ringgit. So now, when you talk about a rapid increase, are you still talking about how much it's changing? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, have a look at that. Okay, have a look at the two sentences again. Yeah. Now, there was a slight increase. So just now your friend said when you use the word slight, you're talking about how much it's changing. Now, the next sentence is the same sentence. The only difference right now is that we're using the word rapid because, all right, now the first one just now was talking about the degree of change. The second one was talking about the speed of change. So again, if you have a look at the sentence, there was a slight increase in the value of the ringgit in comparison to there was a rapid increase in the value of the ringgit. Is it talking about the same thing?
No.
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 One is talking about how much. The second one is talking about how. How?
How fast?
Fast. Yes, excellent. Yeah. So there is a very big difference between there was a slight increase and there was a rapid increase. Be careful of what you use. Okay. All right. It might affect. Yeah. It might affect you. Okay. So be careful of what you use. Yeah. All right. Okay. So of course you have dramatic, sharp, huge, enormous, steep, substantial. So these are all the adjectives that you can use to show the degree of change. And these are all the adjectives that you can use to show the different speed of change. All right. Okay. Next. Yeah. For adverbs, you also have the same thing also. You can have the degree of change and you can also have the speed of change. For instance, the number of students increased dramatically in comparison to the number of students increased rapidly. Okay, do they mean the same thing or do they mean different things? Once again, the number of students increased dramatically in comparison to the number of students increased rapidly. Are we talking about the same? Are we talking about the same thing?
No.
No.
One is talking about what? So say for instance, the number of students increased dramatically. What are we showing right now? How?
Little bit.
Can I repeat?
And like not too much. Not too much.
Yes.
Get higher.
The quantity, right? The degree, the quantity, okay? But when you say the number of students increased rapidly, yeah, we're not talking about the quantity anymore, but we're talking about how fast it's changing from one timeline to another timeline, yeah? Okay, say for instance, yeah, now it's the year 2023, okay? In the year 2023, this is, what month is this? This is May. Okay, say for instance, in April, we had 4,000 students in IIUM, all right? And then in May, we had 4,005 students in IIUM. Can you say there was a rapid increase? Oh, sorry, the number of students in IIUM increased rapidly?
No.
No, you cannot say that. Yeah? Okay, now, say for instance, the number of students in IIUM in April was 2,000 students, and the number of IIUM students in May, which is this month, is 10,000 students. Can I say the number of students in IIUM increased gradually?
No.
No. Now we're not talking about the speed anymore. We're talking about the amount. So instead of saying increase gradually, you will say the number of students in IIUM increased substantially, right? So then you'll be able to differentiate what is the type of information that you're trying to bring forward and let your examiner know that you understand that there is a change of how much and there is a change of how fast. Okay, paham?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, continue. Yeah. Okay, now, of course, yeah, you do have the pairings, okay? For instance, yeah, you have the verb and the noun or the adverbs and adjectives, but you have to be careful when you are pairing the trend verbs or nouns with either adverbs or adjectives, and you have to ensure that the pairing is suitable. Okay, now have a look at the first one over here. Dramatic plateau. Is this right? Can you say a dramatic plateau? No. Why can't you say a dramatic plateau?
Because it's not increase or decrease.
Because?
It does not increase nor decrease.
Very good. There's no increase. Yeah, a plateau is a plateau. A plateau is just that.
Constant.
Okay? So there's no dramatic plateau. When you talk about plateau, it's just a plateau. You cannot qualify it with a verb, with an adjective or with an adverb. Okay, number one. Number two, a sharp slump. Is that correct?
Yes.
It's correct? Okay, now my question is, what's a slump? Is that a strong word or is that a neutral word?
A strong word.
Strong word. How about sharp? Is sharp a strong word or a neutral word?
Strong.
Strong. So strong and strong is redundant. Okay, so you have the word slump, you cannot qualify it with an adverb or an adjective. You cannot say a sharp slump. You cannot say a gradual slump. You cannot say a substantial slump. A slump is just a slump. Okay, all right. The third one, plunged slightly. Is that correct or is that incorrect? Is correct? Okay, if you have a look at the grammar, plunge is a verb and slightly is the adverb. That is correct. But have a look at this semantic meaning. Plunge slightly. The word plunge, is that strong or is that neutral?
Strong.
Strong, slightly. Is slightly strong or is it neutral? Sorry, is it is slightly strong or is it weak?
Weak.
Weak. So how can you plunge slightly? Okay, we know that this is a plunge, for instance. This is a plunge, right? How can you plunge slightly? Is it like this? Oh, it's plunging very slightly. Of course, we can see it, then you can see it. But in the graph, you can't see that, right? So you can't say plunge slightly. Plunge is just a plunge, okay? So we do not have plunge slightly. We do not have sharp slump. You do not have dramatic plateau. Okay, how about the fourth one? Rocketed swiftly. Is that correct or is that incorrect?
Incorrect.
Incorrect, because
The verb is strong with.
excellent. Now you're understanding. Rocketed is strong or swiftly is strong? Rocketed is strong, so you do not need the word swiftly anymore. So when you talk about something that rockets, something goes like that. No, that's not a rocket. Something that goes like that, yeah? Very fast. So for instance, this is at 10 o'clock, and this is at 10:01. Okay, this is what you call rocketed. The number of students rocketed from 10 o'clock to 10:01. Yeah, all right. And finally, fluctuation. All right, so what's a fluctuation? So this is the fluctuation. Okay, can you say that there's a marked fluctuation? Yes or no?
No.
No, okay, you can only see fluctuation. However, there are two types of fluctuation. One is a fluctuation with an upward trend. One is a fluctuation with a downward trend. So what is a fluctuation with a downward trend? The data fluctuates and in the end, it goes down. For instance, a fluctuation with an upward trend, let me change the color of the pen before you get later. I'm not change the color of the pen anymore. Okay, so for instance, if you talk about a fluctuation that goes up, it goes up and then it goes all the way up. This is a fluctuation with an upward trend. This is a fluctuation with a downward trend. Okay. All right, yeah. So these are the type of things that you have to understand. Of course, it's very impressive when you say, oh, there was a dramatic plateau, but then again, it's wrong. Okay, so you have to know how to use the pairings correctly. Okay, any questions about this?
No.
Okay, right, let's continue. Okay, now you can also use approximations, yeah, when you're using data analysis. Okay, so approximations, for instance, you have the word around 1/3, yeah, or you have about half, more than 100, less than half, approximately. So what are approximations? Approximations are qualifiers for data that is not its exact point. Okay, now have a look at this graph over here. Let's have a look at, okay, let's have a look at pineapples. Okay, let's have a look at pineapples over here. Pineapples in November. But before that, what's the name of this graph? What's the name of the graph?
Vertical bar graph.
Very good. It's a vertical bar graph. Is this a static graph or is this a dynamic graph?
Static.
It's a static graph. Can it be a dynamic graph?
Dynamic.
So some say static, some say dynamic. So is this a static graph and a dynamic graph, or is this a dynamic graph and a static graph? Which one is it?
Dynamic.
It's a dynamic graph. It's correct. It's a dynamic graph, but can it be a static graph?
Yes.
Yes. So this is an example of how a dynamic graph can also be a static graph. So I remember your friend said just now, it can become a static graph if we talk about the same thing. Okay, sorry, we talk about the same thing between different subjects. Yeah, for instance, yeah, we're talking about plums and pineapples in November. You can't say it increased, but when you talk about plums in July to plums in November, then you can say that there was a decrease. Okay, anyways, back to my question. When we're talking about pineapples over here in November, so if you're going to write a data analysis over here, so how would you describe the kilos, yeah, the fruit sales in kilos, yeah? How much pineapple was sold in November? So if you have a look at it, it's probably around here, okay? It's probably around here, okay? So what are you gonna say? What is the amount of pineapples? How much was it sold?
2020.
Sorry?
2020.
You can say 2012 kilos, 2012 kilos of pineapples. Are you going to say that? Maybe. Okay, instead of saying that, and you yourself are unsure, even us examiners are unsure, instead of going like, okay, I have to count this, I have to count this, you can just use approximations. So what are approximations? If you have a look at this number over here, the nearest number is 2000. The nearest number over here is 2000, and it is above 2000. Is the difference from the amount 2000, is there a big difference, or is there a small difference from the 2000 mark?
Small difference.
Small difference. So you can say, instead of saying the amount of pineapples sold in November was 2012 kilos, you can say the amount of pineapples sold in November was slightly over 2000 kilos. Yeah. Okay. All right, so instead of giving exact figures, you can also approximate the figures. It's not wrong in data analysis, okay? It's correct, okay? Especially when you do not have the exact number, okay? So when you talk...
Sorry, Miss, can you repeat?
Okay, now when you look into the amount of pineapples sold, okay? So the amount of pineapples sold over here is probably about, say, for instance, 2,200 kilograms, but we're not sure. And we do not want to do the calculation. We do not want to measure using a ruler and whatnot. So instead of you saying in November, the amount of pineapples sold was 2,200 kilograms, what you can say is that the amount of pineapples sold in November was slightly over 2,000 kilograms. Here, you use this word slightly over. Okay, which means it's just over 2,000 kilograms. Yeah. Or for instance, for instance, if we talk about something, yeah, say for instance, do I have anything which is, it's not very specific, yeah, but say for instance, if you have something which is here at this point over here, okay, can someone approximate this number for me? Say for instance, oranges in July was this much. Okay, how can you approximate this figure? Anybody? How can you approximate that figure? Say, for instance, that this is the amount of oranges sold in July. Okay, so this is at 16,000 kilograms, and the mark is just over here. Okay, now how are you going to tell the examiner about the amount of oranges sold in July?
Plus under 16,000.
Over 4,000.
But why do you want to use over 4,000? The nearest number is 16,000, right?
Oranges, isn't it?
Okay. Okay. This is fictitious data. It's not presented in the graph. Okay. So say for instance, right, the graph is like this. Yeah. Say for instance, this is the graph. Yeah. And this is oranges, and these are all oranges in the month of. Sorry. Yeah. I missed. Okay. So these are all oranges in the month of July. Okay. All these are oranges. Okay. This is the mark. This is the mark. Now, how would you describe this to the examiner?
Just under 16,000.
Excellent. Just under 16,000 kilograms. Yeah, so this is what you call approximation. This is very clever, actually. Yeah? Instead of you saying that, oh, it was at 15,900 kilograms, you do not know and you do not have to do the measurement because it's not very clear. So you can use approximations. Okay, approximate figures. So you can say, for instance, more than 100. Yeah, more than, sorry, is there 100? No, more than 8,000 kilograms. Yeah, more than 8,000 kilograms of apples were sold in the month of November. Okay, all right, yeah, okay. So say because we're going to use this as a static graph. Say for instance, okay, if I wanted to show the difference between plums in July to November, how would I show that there is a change in the amount of plums sold in July in comparison to November? Do I say the amount of plums sold in July was at 2,000 kilograms and decreased to 1,000 kilograms in November? Can you say that? Yes, you can say that. But if you're going to approximate it, how can you approximate the amount of plums sold in November in comparison to July? Can someone help me? So the sentence is, the amount of plums sold in November was blank, and the amount sold in July.
About half.
Yes, was around half. Yeah, was around half the amount sold in July. That is another way of how you can approximate figures also. Okay, excellent.
Sir,
Yes.
can you repeat the sentence again? The full sentence.
Okay, the amount of plums sold in November was half the amount of plums sold in July. Okay. All right, you get that?
Okay, thank you.
All right, no worries. Okay, all right, yeah. Let's move on, yeah. Okay, so you can use approximations. Now, if you have no trends also, this is what we said just now, yeah? You can use a quarter, a third, double, triple, half, how many times more, how many times less. So this is exactly what we did just now. Okay, so how about this graph over here? Is this a static graph or is this a dynamic graph?
Dynamic.
It's a dynamic graph because why is it a dynamic graph?
Static.
It's a static graph. Do not be fooled by this number. Okay, this is just a year. Do not be fooled by this number. Okay, all right, yeah. So this is a static graph. Okay, now say for instance, yeah, because there's no trend over here, and you want to apart from approximation, you can use like for instance, okay, you can use qualifiers, okay, to show how two different amounts differentiate from one another. If we are going to look into the number of students who got say for instance, yeah, architecture students, okay, in University B in comparison to architecture students in University D. Can anyone help me? How do you compare the information for the number of students in University B in comparison to the number of students in University D for architecture? Sorry, what do you use? Which one do you use? Tripled. Okay, you use tripled if you are comparing D to B. Very good. But if you're comparing B to D, you cannot use tripled anymore, but you use? Which one do you use?
Double.
Not double, but because double shows the increase. Now, not to show increase, which means that there's more. Now, they're trying to show that there is lesser number of students, architecture students who got A in University B in comparison to the number of students in University D, the architecture students who got A. So if you use the word triple, the number of students who got A in English at University D tripled the number of students in University B. That is correct. But if you say the number of architecture students who scored A in English at University B blank the number of students who scored A in University D. So what do you use?
A third.
Very good. The number of students at University B was a third, yeah, of the number of students who scored A in University D. All right, so there's a difference over there also. Okay, if you want to show the reduction in the number, or if you want to show that there are more people, all right, you have to know how to play around with, say for instance, instead of using triple, you have to use a third. Okay. All right, very good. Okay, so if you want to use double, which means that there are 2 times more, if you want to show that there's 2 times less, or you want to show there's lesser, you can use half, for instance. Yeah, so this is also the vocabulary. Okay, any questions about this? No, yeah, no questions. Yeah, we've only got 15 minutes left, and I've gone through only half of the slides, but it's okay. I'll try to show this as much as I can to you, okay? Now, we also have the vocabulary for the pie charts, yeah? If you use the pie chart, a pie chart has a special vocabulary, okay? You can't use, say, for instance, yeah, the number of students increase unless you have 3 different pie charts with 3 different timelines, and then you can use the trend. But if it is just a single pie chart, it's usually a pie chart which has no trend. And for a pie chart that has no trend, you use this. For instance, the highest, the greatest, the lowest, the most percentage, the smallest proportion, the largest number. Okay, so this is the vocabulary that you can use for the pie chart, right? Also, you can use this. Yeah, you can use this in a pie chart. Also, you can use this in a static graph, okay? As many Proton cars are sold as Honda cars, for instance. 3 times as many men are employed in IIUM as women, yeah? For instance, more tourists come from Indonesia than Vietnam. Okay, so this is the comparison. Okay, when you're comparing, it's also called an analysis. Do not think that that a comparison is not analysis. In fact, yeah, it is an analysis for static graphs. Yeah, you can use it for dynamic graph also to show, but also you have to substantiate with figures also. Okay, and then you have comparatives and superlatives. Okay, for instance, you have biggest, large, larger, largest, expensive, more expensive, most expensive, worst, least, better. So I'm sure that you know about the comparatives and superlatives, and you can also use this to describe about the data that you see. Like for instance, just now when we're talking about Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia was the biggest producer of oils throughout the 3 stated years. You can say that, and then you substantiate that with your data. For example, in the year 1960, this amount was produced. It increased to 19,000 barrels in the year 2000, for instance. Yeah. All right. So you can use comparatives and superlatives also. All right. Now, sentence structures. Yeah. I don't think we have time to do this, but it's okay. I will skip this. Why? Because I have asked for another session. If you're interested to know about the sentence structures, you can join the second series of this workshop later on. Okay, so I will not do this. Yeah, we're out of time. Okay, we're out of time. Yeah, so we'll not do this. I will go to a sample data analysis. Yeah, a sample data analysis. Okay, so now you have all the information apart from the sentence structure. Now what we're going to do right now is that we're going to look into how you can present your data analysis with the information that I have provided you with. For instance, okay, let's have a look at this graph over here. The graph shows the different modes of commuter transport used in London to travel to work in 1960, 1980, and 2000. Okay, first question, what's the name of this graph? What's the type of the graph? What's the type of the graph, students?
Vertical bar graph.
Vertical bar graph. Is it a static graph or is this a dynamic graph?
Dynamic. Dynamic.
Dynamic, very good. Okay, so this is a dynamic graph. Okay, now if you're going to write your analysis right now, this is what you have to do. Number 1, of course, you have to read the questions carefully. Number 2, you have to understand the visual presented to you. The type of graph, we have actually identified that as a vertical bar graph, and it's a static. It's a dynamic bar graph. Have a look at the axis. Okay, so now over here we're talking about the percentage of commuters, or we're talking about the mode of transport and the years. Okay, so these are the years. All right. So have a look at how we write the introduction. The introduction states the main purpose of the chart, written in paraphrase using your own words. So you are going to be talking about the chart right now in the introduction section of your analysis, and this is what you can come up with. The vertical bar graph shows the changing patterns in commuting by train, car, tube, or bus. It should not be or, it should be and bus for commuters in London in the years 1960, 1980, and 2000. So this is your introductory sentence. Okay, this part over here. So you're talking about this, yeah? This is your introductory sentence. Okay, you're talking about the graph, you're talking about the years, you're talking about the percentage of commuters, and you're talking about the different type of transport. It's complete. After you have spoken or introduced your graph, what you have to do next is that you have to give an overview. Overall, it can be seen that commuter figures were erratic for all transport types throughout the 3 stated years. So what I'm trying to say over here is that there's no specific trend. Now, when you look into the different type of transport, there are different trends throughout the different years. Okay, so that's why for the introduction, for the overall view, I have written it like this, saying that it was erratic throughout the 3 stated years. Now, my question, can you say, all right, say for instance, this is your introduction. The vertical bar graph shows the changing patterns in commuting by train, car, tube, or bus for commuters in London in the years 1960 to 2000. Can you say that?
Yes.
Can you say that 1960-2000? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, no. Actually, no. Why? Because we're not talking about 1961. We're not talking about 1962. We're not talking about 1963. We're not talking about 1981. We're not talking about 1999. We're only talking about 1960, 1980, and 2000. Be careful. If you write 1960 to 2000, that is a distortion. That is wrong information. So it's 1960, 1980, and 2000. You have to introduce that in the introductory sentence. Later on, you can simplify that, but you cannot say 1960 to 2000. That is wrong information. Okay?
Yes.
Okay, next, yeah. Now I'm going to analyze the train and the tube, yeah. The first analysis describes the data for the use of trains and tube given in the chart, written in the writer's own words. Now, why am I writing about the train and the tube? Any ideas? So I'm grouping the information right now. So my first group is the train and the tube. Why is it that I'm using the train and the tube? Anybody? Okay, I'm using the train and I'm grouping the train and the tube because the trend is somewhat similar. There is a fluctuation in the percentage of commuters. For instance, when we talk about the train, you can see that it goes up and down. So this is a fluctuation. And then if you have a look at the tube, it's also a fluctuation. It goes down and then it goes up. But this is a fluctuation with a downward trend. This is a fluctuation with an upward trend. Okay, so if I was to write the analysis, this is how I'll write it. From the graph, it can be seen that the figures for train and tubes was somewhat erratic throughout the 3 stated years. Now, here you can use the 3 stated years. You don't have to use the word 1960, 1980 to 2000 anymore because it was introduced in the introductory sentence. Next, after you have analyzed, given analysis, you have to illustrate your analysis. To illustrate further, the percentage for both train and tube commuters range. Now, this is the approximation from approximately 20% to slightly under 30%. Okay, so what we're talking about is that in the 3 years, you can see that the lowest amount was around 20%, and the highest amount was just slightly under 30%. Okay, we can put that together. And then you come out with your second analysis. However, most commuters used the tube in 1960, while in 1980, they used the trains more than the 2 other types of transports. Okay, so you can see that this is an analysis in comparison to describing, listing, or stating the obvious. All right. Okay. Number 3, I'm going to talk about cars. Why am I talking about cars? Because it's the only one that shows that there is an increase. Okay. So how do I write the analysis? Next, the usage of cars as the mode of transport increased steadily during the period of 1960, 1980, and 2000. So I can just write the 3 stated years, but the previous sentence I said that just also might sound a bit redundant. Okay, to continue, for example, a little above 5%. Okay, so again, yeah, you have your approximation over here. A little above 5% of commuters used cars in 1960 before it boomed. Okay, yeah, before it boomed to slightly under 40% in the year 2000. Okay, all right, so you can see that there is the usage of the approximation, and there is the usage of the what do you call that? The adverbs or the verbs that shows the degree of change or the magnitude. Sorry, the degree of change or the speed of change. Okay, it depends. So over here, what I showed was that over here I showed that there was a speed of change. Okay, to show because there's only 3 years over here. All right. Okay, next. Yeah, for buses, okay, why did I use bus? It's very obvious. The third analysis describes the data for the use of buses given in the chart, written in the writer's own word, because it's the only one that goes down. Okay, so in contrast, The graph illuminates that the usage of bus decreased steadily. Okay, to exemplify, the commuter percentage was at its peak at just under 35% in 1960 before slipping to exactly 15% in 2000. Okay, so this is a very exact figure. So you can say exactly 15%, and this is just under 35%. So you can use just under 35% as the approximation. Now, you might be asking, why aren't we talking about the year 1980? We're not talking about the year 1980 because if you include that information, it will sound like you are trying to describe each piece of information that has been presented to you. By grouping the information and explaining as one entity, it is enough to show that there is a movement from the year 1960 to the year 2000, and there was also a downward trend in the percentage of commuters. Okay, and finally, what you have to do, you have to close your report, you have to close your analysis, just as if you were writing an essay, you will also have to write the conclusion. So in closing, the graph indicates that the percentage of commuters who use different transportation types for commuting to work differed in the years 1960, 1980, and 2000. So you can see, for the overall view, it was very general, but for the closing, it becomes very specific. The overall view, we said that the number was different, right? There was different throughout the 3 years, and now we're saying that what did we see for the just now for the introduction? Okay, it was erratic. It was erratic, and then for the closing, you see that it differed. Okay, all right, it differed throughout the 3 stated years. Okay, and then all right, once you have finished your conclusion, your analysis, and then you can write your essay, and this is how your essay would look like. All right, this is how your report would look like. Now, in looking to this report, it will consist of 215 words because I wrote this to show you how specific you can write your data analysis. In fact, you can write this in 150 words, 180 words. It's still possible. You have to simplify a bit more. But since I wrote it a bit more, it's longer. That's why I caught up more words, more words than the normal amount of words which can be used. Okay, so we had the introduction. We had the figures on the use of trains and tube. We had the figures on the use of cars, and we had the figures on the use of buses. And finally, we will also have the closing part of the essay. Okay. All right. Now for the student errors, okay, very fast, very fast. I'm going to go through the student errors. Number 1, you do not understand, not you, people do not understand the data presented to them. Okay, now have a look at the analysis. It says just over 40 people were unemployed in Selangor in 2020. So this is Selangor in 2020, and it says just over 40 people were unemployed. Why is this wrong?
Because it's more than half.
It's more than half. So in what way is it wrong?
Maybe it's just over if the bar is slightly lower.
It's slightly lower than?
I mean, I don't know.
It's okay. It's okay. Okay, now this is wrong. Okay, have a look. Have a look at the figure. It says just over 40 people. Okay. Now, if you have a look over here, is this over 40 people?
No,
It's why?
it's actually slightly over,
Slightly over.
like more than 40.
Okay, so it's more than 40 again. When you say slightly over, more than 40, okay, it's still correct. Yeah, it's still correct, but this is incorrect. Still incorrect. Why? Have a look at the graph. Have a look at the graph properly. Once again.
The graph only one.
It's only 1. Okay, I didn't get that. Can you say it again once more? Let's try once again. Anyone who'd like to help anyone here? Okay, if you look into the graph, properly, have a look at the axis. The axis is measured in
Thousands.
thousand. So is this 40?
No.
Thousands.
No, just over 4,000 people.
4,000 people.
Yes, mistake number one, not understanding the data. Very good, excellent. Number two, not translating note form to grammatical English. Okay, now have a look at the analysis. The average life expectancy of Malaysia non-smoking in the year 1980 was around 70%. Malaysia, non-smoking, yeah, in 1980 was around 70%. Is this sentence correct?
Wrong.
Sebab?
Because we are unsure about the amount the Malaysia non-smoking in the year between the year 1980.
Okay, because we're not sure of the amount, but we have approximated the amount. We can say it was around 70, so that makes you safe. Yeah, that makes you safe, but it's still wrong. Yeah, you say that it's wrong because of the amount, but I'm saying that something else is wrong over here.
70 years old.
Was around 70, but we have the word life expectancy, so we know that 70 refers to the age. Okay, good try. Someone else?
Maybe because of the what do you call?
Because of the what?
Apostrophe.
I can't hear you. You're breaking up.
Maybe because of the apostrophe.
Because of the apostrophe. Oh, this is not an apostrophe over here. This is supposed to be a close quotation mark. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good try. Okay, I'll give you the answer. Now have a look over here. Okay, so this is Malaysia and this is non-smoking, right? Okay, this is non-smoking. Is that correct? Malaysia non-smoking?
Yes.
Good.
No, it's not correct.
No.
No, it should be the average life expectancy of
Non-smoking.
of Malaysian non-smokers. Right. Non-smoker, a person who doesn't smoke is a non-smoker. So this is not translating into correct English. Instead of non-smoking, because this is just to show the chart. But then again, when you write your sentence, you're not talking about Malaysian non-smoking, but you're talking about Malaysians who do not smoke. So they are non-smokers. Okay, second error. Third error. Using detailed figures when they can be approximated. So for instance, this is what we said just now. Firstly, X started at 1.2345%. They increased to 2.3456%. They climbed to 3.5678%. And you go on and on and on and on and on. Okay. So do not use this. Okay. Do not use detailed figures like this. Okay. All right. Number 4, wrong subject reference. Okay. Have a look at this one. Yeah. This is also an error which is usually produced by students, okay, in their data analysis. The unemployment rate in the UK rose by 2% between 2008 and 2009, whereas Canada decreased by about 1%. The USA was the highest at just over 4%. Okay, what is wrong with this analysis? Let me give you a clue. Canada decreased. USA was the highest. Okay, what's wrong with that? Okay, can anyone tell me why is this wrong?
Because it is not comparing.
Because, sorry?
Because it is not comparing.
Because it's not comparing. You can say it's a comparison. Good try, but then again, have a look at it again. Yeah, Canada decreased. What does that mean?
Canada
What decrease?
and a decrease.
Canada what?
Is it the grammar is wrong?
The grammar is correct. Canada
Okay.
decreased. Yeah, it's correct. But what is wrong with Canada decreased and what's wrong with USA was the highest?
USA was increased.
USA increased. Okay, now let me ask you, can Canada decrease? Can Malaysia decrease? Can we decrease? Can the country decrease?
Uh,
No.
No,
Can
no.
the country increase? No. What decreased over here? Canada did not decrease, but
The unemployment rate.
unemployment rate. Okay, so instead of saying Canada decreased, you can say whereas Canada's decrease. When you have the preposition, when you have the apostrophe and the S, this shows that you're talking about the unemployment rate. So which means instead of saying the unemployment rate in the UK rose by 2% between 2008 and 2009, whereas Canada's decreased. Now you know what of Canada's decrease? What of Canada decreased? The unemployment rate in Canada by having the apostrophe S. Now USA was the highest. Was USA the highest? Is it the highest country in the world? No, it's not the highest country in the world. We're talking about the highest employment, unemployment rate. Okay, so be careful. Okay, this is what we call a wrong subject reference. If you write this, you will be penalized. Okay, you cannot say Canada decreased. You cannot say Malaysia increased. You cannot say Thailand fluctuated. Can Thailand fluctuate? Can Thailand fluctuate?
No.
No, I have not heard of Thailand fluctuating yet. Okay, so let's not hope that it fluctuates. Okay, all right, so be careful. Okay. Okay, error number 5, describing every number in a chart. So for instance, firstly at 6 a.m., the number of people stood at 100. Then at 7, it increased to 200. After that, it shot up to 400. In contrast, at 9 a.m., it dropped slightly to 300, all the way until 10 p.m. So even though the grammar is correct, but this is not analysis, this is listing information. You're just talking about this, you're talking about this, you're talking about this, you're talking about this, all the way until here, okay? All right, this is listing. Error number 6. Carrying trend verbs, yeah, verbs, adverbs, adjective, noun. Number 1, the number of tourists abroad slightly plunged in 2002. What's wrong with this? Which part is wrong?
Slightly plunged.
Very good. So you can say the number of tourists plunged in 2002. How about the second one? In 2008, the number of tourists minimally rocketed to its highest point.
Minimally rocketed.
Yeah, so we get rid of minimally. Okay, you just say rocketed. And then number 3, there was a gradual boom in the number of tourists last year. It should be
Boom.
yes,
Gradual.
only. Okay,
Boom.
there was a boom. Okay, this is correct. This is correct. There was a boom in the number of tourists last year. And last, number 6, is the grammar mistakes. Number 1, in 2019, there is a decline in the import of wheat. Okay, what's wrong? What's wrong? In 2019,
There was.
very good, there was. Number 2, in 2027, Malaysia was a well-developed country.
Malaysia will.
Malaysia will. Okay, Malaysia will be a well-developed country. Number 3, number 4, this is about the sentence structure that I have not gone through just now because we do not have enough time. Yeah. So inshallah, when I have the second series of this workshop, when you come to the workshop, I'll teach you how to write the sentences correctly. Okay, so in the end, what you have done is that you have analyzed numerical data, you will have identified differences and similarities, you will also have compared and contrasted, and you will have identified and described trends. Okay, any questions, people?
Can we get the slide?
Yes, I will share the slide with Madam Noor Amili. I think she will pass it to your class teacher, but it's still incomplete. Yeah, so yeah, but I'll pass you the slide. Okay, I will pass you the slide. Okay. All right.
Inshallah, we will be shared with your principal teachers.
Yeah, inshallah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Can we have only 2 questions?
Yeah, any questions?
Yes.
Right.
So we just need to put the obvious one information to the graph. Is it?
Not to say obvious information, you put the significant information in the graph, but it has to cover everything. Okay, it has to cover everything. Say for instance, if you're writing the what do you call that? If you're writing the just now, yeah, about this one over here, you cannot just talk about, say, for instance, when you talk about something which is obvious, you're just saying that this is under 20, it rose to this much, and it dropped this much. But you have to put the information together, group the information together, you come up with an analysis, and that is what you have to present.
So we need to touch all the information.
Yes, you must. You must. If not, it's not a complete report. So how do you touch all the information? That's when you have to group the information together.
All right.
All right, good.
So, Mister,
Yes.
we need more samples of answers and question and answers of graph.
Yeah, but that
Sent to us.
I understand that. I think I will relay this information to your writing teacher. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So back to you, Madam Nur Amili.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Hairul, for the overwhelming information. Yeah, thank you for helping the students overcoming their problems and aware of their weaknesses and also mistakes that they will encounter, and hope that they will be able to answer the EPT, yeah, for the data analysis. And regarding the sample questions and also model answers, I think you should find out more with your writing teachers. I think the practice or the hands-on practices should be done in class, right? Okay, I am so grateful that you have spent more than 1 hour and a half, Dr. Hairul, with us today.
Still not enough time.
Yeah, I know you're rushing like a bullet train. Yeah. Okay, whatever it is, I think the students will be able to view your teaching in YouTube later. Yeah, they can watch over and over again, and maybe the teachers can also use this as their platform to share the information with regards to the EPT placement test. Yeah, inshallah. All right, so if there's any question that you would like to pose to Dr. Hairul, probably Dr. Hairul, would you like to share your email or?
Yeah, sure. I can share my email address. I'll type it here.
In the chat, please.
Yeah, in the chat.
Okay, while you are typing, as the students requested for more workshops like this, inshallah, we will announce the workshops that will be coming up soon, yeah, but not too soon, probably the following weeks. And for Dr. Hairul's next face-to-face workshop, yeah, probably what we can do, we will ask the students to register before they come in. Then we will be able, yeah, then they will be able to, we will be able to anticipate how many would be interested to take part, as probably you want to do hands-on practices and show the sentence structures and also talk to them about words they use and so on. Okay. All right. I think that's all from us. Let's close our session today with Tasbih, Farah, and Surah Al-As. Okay, Assalamualaikum everyone. See you again. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kak Mili.
Thank you, Hairul.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thanks.